91 mile an hour.
G'day, Stu here from UAV Futures, and today, well, one of the most requested frames I've ever had on the channel. I got so many messages saying, Stuart, can you please review the LX6 or the Leopard? And yep, all right, that's exactly what we're going to be doing now. So because you guys want it so much, I've gone out and I've built myself a Leopard right here. This is the LX6, the 6-inch version, and this is a bit of a mega review or a double up review, because what I'm going to also talk about is these bad boy motors right here. Just look at them. These are the LD power motors as well, and I know Joshua Barwell had great things to say about these motors, so I can't wait to test them out. So enough rambling. What we're going to do, we're going to stick it on the bench, break it down, have a look at how the frame goes together, have a bit of a more detailed, closer look at the motors, and then take it out to the field and rip it around. All right, well, let's do it. Alrighty, so here it is on the bench, and isn't it a thing of beauty? Now, I know a lot of people are going to comment about, you know, is this a clone of the D-Quad Obsession or anything like that? And I'm not so sure. Usually, I think that, you know, clones can look very similar, but I think Gep RC has done some really cool stuff in the past, and I'm not, look, I could be mistaken, and if I am, definitely drop it down in the comments and go check out those other frames as well. The D-Quad Obsession looks absolutely insane. It's got a very similar design, but I'm not sure if this is a direct clone. I'm not sure which one came around first, because I know in the past, Gep RC has made some really unique and individual stuff. Anyway, enough rambling about that. Let's have a look at this little beauty, because I absolutely love the look of it. Just look at these high-res pictures. I'm going to flash them on the screen. There really isn't too much out there right now. I really like this style that's coming through. Super strong, and I love the mix. And I don't know if, you know, if Armaton started this, but about time we started mixing aluminium or aluminum for you guys in the States with our carbon fiber, because it's a great way. They're both super strong and super light materials, so it's a great way to merge those two materials together to make a strong little FPV quadcopter. Now, I've got the 6-inch version, which is why these arms look absolutely massive on here, but I do think that's going to make for a very stable flight experience, and I'm going to explore that more in some later videos. But overall, you can see it comes together very, very nicely. Now, we're going to talk about the motors a little bit separately towards the end of the build, because there's something I want to look at in detail as well. But what I do want to show you, it's a very simple build. So let's take the top off and have a look at how easy it comes together. So if you're in the field and you need to work on anything, you've just got these 4 screws on the bottom right here, because it is made up of 4 separate arms. So you just unscrew it, and now you're literally off to the races. So you've got this one sort of aluminium part that clips on the top, but once you've taken that off, you can see, well, hopefully you guys can see anyway, I don't want to stress the cables too much, but that's it, very simple. So you pretty much have your brace of your arms, and connected to that is your little aluminium part on the top. It does require some specific building, because when I was building this, I didn't have too much room. You want to sort of make the most of it, and it's definitely recommended to get a little VTX that has a pigtail on it. So I'm using the Hawkeye, you can see, because, or maybe like one of those little VTX 03s or something. I'll link them down below anyway, but something, because I don't think you could stick a big VTX in here that didn't really have a pigtail, because it's definitely going to help with the design of this frame. You've got this little brace at the back right there. Now on mine, look, I've just got some 30 amp BL I'll link all the components down below anyway, but I've just got some 30 amp BL Racer Star ESCs, and then we should probably talk about the 2 parts of the frame that I found interesting. So number one, the arms are pretty thick. I don't think this thing is going to be breaking anytime soon. It feels fantastic. You've got some 4mm, hopefully you guys can see that, 4mm carbon right there. All the arms feel like they've been chamfered. Very, very strong, a very, very rigid sort of frame. But there was one part that I didn't really like too much, and it does require some, I guess, just careful consideration when you're building. So right here at the front, depending on what flight controller you're going to use, you might actually run out of some space, because you've got this awesome looking yellow piece of carbon right here. I really love that gold color, but that's sharp, and it is going to be pressing up against these wires at the front, at least in the build that I've done anyway. So what I've had to do, I've just put a bit of yellow heat shrink in there, because look, it does fit nicely, but you know, if things are rattling around, the last thing I want to do is a piece of carbon cutting through some power cables and, you know, just bursting my quad into flames. So that's one little recommendation. When you're building, be very, very careful about when you're thinking, when I'm going to put the top of my quad back together, you know, am I going to be cutting any wires or anything like that? So I'm going to screw this back together, and then we'll have a bit of a closer look at these awesome looking motors. Alrighty, so these are the LD power motors. The ones I've got, these are the 2305 2600 kV, and look, I've had these for a little bit. LD sent them to me a little while ago, but I wanted to put them on the right craft. I sort of wanted something that needed a ton of power, and I think that's what these motors are going to provide. So basically, these motors, they're a little bit bigger, that 2300 size. I think the 2600 kV means it's going to absolutely rip. Are they made for 6-inch props? I don't think these versions are, because look, this is a 6-inch frame, but what I do plan to do is spin some 5-inch props up here. But look, overall, I think these motors are going to be absolute little powerhouses. I'm going to leave a link to Joshua Bardwell's video. I'll put it down in the description below, where he used these motors, and he absolutely raved about them. So I can't wait. I think this build is going to be an absolute rocket. Oh, before I forget, one little thing too, I should probably point out, one big difference with these motors, they've got a little board here that you solder your wires to now, instead of your wires coming out of your motor. Do I like that? I'm not 100% sure. It probably adds a little bit of extra weight, and I think it might be a bit of a breaking point. Yes, it might be easier to replace some wires, but nowadays with everything being direct soldered, I'd probably just prefer these wires, and then we simply direct solder that to the ESC. So I would prefer it if these little pads were not here. But that's just my opinion. Look, drop it down below. What do you think in the comments? Do you think it's a good idea to have these little tabs on here to solder to for your wires, or would you just prefer these wires to come out and direct solder it to your ESC? Anyway, let me know. Let's take it out the field, rip it around. 3, 2, 1. Rightio, out here in the field, about to rip around with the Leopard or the LX6. Now I've got the 6-inch version. I really think that's going to offer some good stability. And most excitingly, is that more exciting? I don't know. Anyway, something I'm excited about as well, we've got these LD power motors on here. So we've got the 2600 kV, some cyclones on here, and I think this thing is going to absolutely rip. So we'll fly it around. I'll show you guys some footage of it, and we'll also hit it with the speed gun and see just how quick we can get it. All right, let's do it. Okie dokie, on board, and yeah, look, you can get a separate GoPro mount. I'll link that down below, because otherwise it's a little bit difficult to mount some of the GoPros on these LX6s or the Leopard frames. But flying this around, the first thing I'm doing, I guess, just here, I'm testing the receiver range, because I just switched out the receiver, so I just wanted to make sure I didn't get any fail safes or anything like that before I gave it a bit of a punch. And then we take it around for a little bit of a spin, so sort of just cruising here, and then I think we punch it back, and it is definitely very, very, look at that, that's a very, very quick quad with those motors. Now, probably the biggest thing we should talk about is how a 6-inch frame actually feels in the air. So this is definitely a video that I want to investigate a lot more. But flying around with the LX6, it made me really realize that this bigger quad, it's almost like having some physical expo on your quad. I felt like I needed to push the sticks more, and yeah, like that. It was almost like there was an actual physical expo curve on my quad or something. It made hitting gates a little bit more tricky for me. But and look, it did make the quad feel a bit more stable. But I think in the future, with a higher quad like this, a bigger quad, I might be able to put my rates up to make it feel a bit more like the 5. It felt heaps more stable, but it was actually a totally different flying experience. There you can see some of the speeds absolutely ripping around, and I'm pretty sure it killed my battery trying to do some acrobatics. Pretty sure it killed my battery when I was flying it around. But yeah, look, I'm a big fan of the motors. They probably didn't blow me away quite as much as I was hoping. They definitely weren't bad. They definitely had heaps of power. But they weren't knock your socks off next level. But I guess, you know, how many motors are getting so good nowadays, it's hard to sort of tell some of the best ones apart. And the frame overall, I really like it. I think it came together quite nicely, and it looks awesome as well. So I think in a moment we have a little bit of a crash, I'm not too sure. And then of course, I don't know how many of you pilots out there have this happen. You're flying around, you do a bit of a crash, and then you go to take off, and you get stuck in the grass. But yeah, look, overall, I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this frame. I'm probably going to deck mine out with LEDs, because I think it's going to look awesome. And yeah, here's the little crash right here. But I'm a bit of a fan of this one. It's got a bit of some cool style to it. So look, we're ready to take off, and then yep, all clear, mate, and nothing. So that was pretty fun, pretty quick. But what I want to do, we're going to get Calvin on the speed gun. He gets the nice safe job. So I'm pretty much going to be going full throttle, see how many how many miles per hour we can get, and I'll be flying, but he'll be a bit dangerous. All right, let's see how fast we can go. Are you ready?
Yeah. $81 miles an hour. 91 miles an hour. That's almost 100 miles an hour. My God. Okay.
All right, and Calvin's about to fly one over there. He's also built his own, but he's got the LX5.
I'm not used to high kV engines, I've got to be honest with you there. I believe these are 2600 kV.
Yep.
And they've got a lot of top end. Not as torquey as what I'm used to. It looks like the frame itself is very well balanced. I reckon it would be a tank for racing. I reckon it could really take some punishment and just keep on going. The way it's designed, you've got plenty of room to put your antennas and everything that might stick out and be damaged on a quad. Everything's well placed on it. I think it's a pretty darn good frame.
How did you find building, because you built the 5-inch, how did you find building your 5-inch one?
It wasn't really a headache. I found it a pretty easy build, and it does give you enough space to cram everything that you need to cram in. Made for an easy build.
Rating out of 10 for the frame?
For the frame, look, it's a great frame. It could be lighter, but for hard racing, I think it's perfect because it's got that durability. It can take a crash.
You mean
no doubt about
for
it.
like crashing durability side, not
Yeah.
hardcore racing, like crashing wise?
Yeah, well, wherever you're going to be having crashes, plenty of them, and high speed ones, I think this is a great frame for it. It's very well balanced. It's very easy to control. And for me, that is the very most important thing about a quad, is how easy it is to control, especially when you're trying to hit small gates fast. So I think it's a well-balanced frame, and it's going to afford you some great racing.
What about the motors? What would you say on the motors? How did they feel?
Look, I thought the KV was too high for me. I would have brought them down. LD Power have some 2450s, which would probably be a better choice for a 6-inch frame, I think. Because it's a heavier quad, I think you'd be better with a lower KV motor.
All right, thanks, man. Rightio. So just a little sort of extra note as well. We got another pilot down here, Hamish. He's just getting into the hobby, and he's been talking about the LX frames for a while. But now we've got the 5 and 6 inch, so let's see what he thinks, because I know he wants to get one, but he's not sure. So if it was up to you guys, what would you get, the 5 inch or the 6 inch, if you're going to run 5 inch props?
I feel like there's more to clip a gate on this one, but if it has more stability, then that's something I could deal with.
So which one are you going to get?
Still haven't decided that. I think we have to wait.
Okay.
Fly a bit more of the day and then call that one.
Yeah, all right. Actually, I should probably ask Calvin, because he's flown them both.
Yeah,
what one do you reckon, Calvin? Out of if you had to pick one,
I have to know.
what one do you think? What one would you recommend for Hamish to get?
Well, it's hard because they're two different powertrains.
I mean, just the frames, just the 6 inch or the 5 inch.
From what I understand, they've got a stretched X version of the 5 inch.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be a happy compromise between the two frames. As it stands, I tell you what, I like this 5 inch.
Mm-hmm.
I can control it like no other. Very good, very locked in. The powertrain I've got on it is just right for it, and I'm keeping the heat on Stewie's butt with this thing. So
that sounds inappropriate, but
Yeah, put that in.
all right. So Calvin recommends a 5 inch. We'll probably just cut it there before it gets too heated. Alrighty, so there it is. There's my review of the LX6 or the Leopard with the LD power motors. And the first thing I want to talk about, which will be very brief, will be what it felt like to have 5 inch props on a 6 inch frame. It definitely felt like there was some stuff we need to investigate there. Almost like a bit of physical expo, but that's going to be part of a whole nother video. In regards to the frame, I think it's a really cool frame. Really like the way it comes together. It looks awesome, and who doesn't like a quad that has a bit of bling? And the only thing you need to be careful of is the amount of space in there. Make sure you choose your components correctly, and also you don't want to be shorting anything out, so you definitely do need to be careful of your builds and making sure nothing's getting cut up. In terms of the motors, I think the LD power motors, they weren't as impressive as I thought they were going to be. Now, I don't know if this is just because this might be a little bit of a heavier quad or 6 inch or something like that. I know maybe on a lighter quad, this higher KV motor would have an absolute ton of thrust. But for me, I guess it just felt, nothing super amazing. Definitely not something bad. Probably equivalent to like the white tops or the red bottoms or some of the other motors out there. And I do think I like higher KV motors, but maybe these props were just a little bit too much on there for the Cyclone. Still a super fast quad, and hitting it with that speed gun, we got some pretty crazy speeds, but I guess I was just expecting even more so. So I maybe even a more power battery. That could also be the battery that's letting it down as well. Have to do a little bit more testing. But hopefully you guys like that. If you're after a pretty cool, unique looking frame that definitely looks awesome and can make for a really cool build that you can rip around, that would be good for probably racing and also acro, because it does have a little bit of weight, definitely check out the LX6. And I do think the LD power motors were, a pretty good average motor. But other than that, subscribe for more FPV related content. I'll link everything down below where you can get all this stuff. And as always, happy flying. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Definitely subscribe if you're new to the channel and check out these videos. And I'm also going to leave a little link here to my Patreon page, because I've got some fantastic Patreon supporters and I like to give back to them as well. So if you want to join the UAV Futures family, there's things like bonus Velcro straps, little bundles of FPV goodies and things like that that also get sent out. Anyway, happy flying.